is Russia more attractive now than before the protests in December because of the inherent political pressures that now rest on the Kremlin to push forward with reforms?
It certainly is more attractive, John, because of the removal of the political doubt that existed in the minds of many global investors. Let's be clear also that the Russian authorities have reacted to these protests not with oppression, not with violence, but with accommodation. That's probably the first time in hundreds of years of Russian history that we've actually seen that. I live here in Moscow with my family, as you know. I've been to pretty much all the protests that we've seen here, both pro-Putin and anti-Putin. The atmosphere at pretty much all of them has been carnival-type atmosphere. There's been an air of black comedy to a lot of these protests. And yet, even though we've seen these protests happening, Putin's reacted by reinstating regional elections for the upper house of the Russian parliament. He's responded by, I think, making it easier for people to run in presidential elections going forward. Most importantly, we will see independent politicians emerging as credible candidates for national posts going forward. We've already seen that happening. We saw Mikhail Prokhorov in the election poll almost 9% of the vote. He's just a local businessman. That's a very, very credible result. And he will certainly carry on in politics, and many other Russians will follow him from business backgrounds in order to give the powers that be now a run for their money.
Yeah, in fact, he's made a number of promises, he being Vladimir Putin, getting growth back up to 7%, a military budget of $768 billion over the next decade, health and education spending going up $170 billion. These are all pluses for growth. The OECD, and a fairly critical report that I'm sure you saw back in December, was suggesting that he's overdoing it, he's overspending, and they're too reliant on the oil revenues and not diversified enough to withstand that sort of spending.
There's something in that. I've got a lot of respect for the very detailed work the OECD are doing on the Russian economy at the moment, John, as a prelude to full Russian membership quite soon, following WTO membership, of course. It's certainly the case that about 40% of government revenues still derive from oil and gas. But where 45% of GDP was oil and gas back in 2003, it's now only 17%. Russia's service sector is twice as big as the oil and gas sector. And you know, if you look at the stock market so far this year, the Russian market's up 25% in dollars. It's pretty much the best performing major stock market in the world, certainly leading the BRICS. But it's still got a PE of less than 6, which makes it tremendously good value. And a lot of that low PE now is coming from the very high earnings that we're seeing. I've got a lot of respect for Jim Rogers, but my fund's been investing in Russia since 1996. And we've returned 23% a year after fees. So, and we certainly don't spend much time cavorting with politicians. We spend lots of time talking in very detailed terms with company management. And the best bargains we've seen here over the years, the best value that we've created, has been not in the oil and gas companies, but has been in the service sector companies, the retail companies, the transport companies. And in that 25% charge we've seen so far this year, John, in the Russian market, it's been the retailers, the consumer goods companies, the transport companies, the infrastructure companies that have really led that charge, not the oil and gas companies. And that's generally been the case, John, in the 15 years that we've been investing in Russia.